The lengthy licensing process for Flight 5 is absolutely not welcome news for SpaceX. Let's be real for a moment. Waiting for bureaucratic machinery like the FAA to change always takes too long. So, how can they escape the grip of the FAA? What proactive steps can SpaceX take specifically? Let's find out everything in today's episode. Oh, just a second. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news and analysis in the space industry. Thank you very much. The development of SpaceX's Starship is hitting one obstacle after another. It's been 4 months since the 4th test flight, yet Starship is still grounded, unable to launch again. Texas, the home of this ambitious project, is turning into a challenging environment for the next-gen rocket's development at the moment. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, with its overly complex regulations and bureaucratic approach, has emerged as the main villain in Starship's progress. The agency has repeatedly claimed that SpaceX violated both federal and Texas state laws, leading to multiple investigations and lengthy reviews. But it's not just the FAA breathing down SpaceX's neck. We have to know that several other agencies are involved in overseeing and evaluating the company's operations, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWS, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, among others. These organizations keep slamming SpaceX with accusations of various violations, leading to fines and significant delays for the Starship project. Too many agencies, operating around what's happening on the ground, are making decisions about what's supposed to soar into space. This tangled web of regulations is making Texas a bit uncomfortable for Starship to thrive in. Clearly, the legal framework needs to evolve to better support the future of space exploration. So, what can SpaceX do to free itself from this unnecessary red tape, temporarily shifting Starship operations to another location? I'm talking about Florida, the cradle of the U.S. space industry. In fact, SpaceX has long had detailed plans to deploy Starship from Florida. In their Environmental Impact Statement, EIS, SpaceX laid out an ambitious plan, up to 44 Starship launches per year from this location. What's impressive is how far ahead SpaceX has thought in planning for Florida. The company has prepared and secured approval for all possible launch and landing scenarios at Launch Complex 39A, LC-39A. These scenarios include landing on the Chopsticks system, landing on an offshore drone ship, and soft landing. This comprehensive approval strategy allows SpaceX to flexibly switch up Starship's landing methods without having to request additional permissions for every single adjustment, saving a tremendous amount of time. The good news is that the environmental review process in Florida is going relatively smoothly. So far, no major issues have popped up, and by moving operations here, SpaceX could avoid many of the environmental challenges they're facing at Starbase in Texas. Florida has a long history of balancing space activities with environmental protection, with clear procedures and regulations already in place. This could help minimize the conflicts and disputes that SpaceX is currently dealing with in Texas. Launching Starship from Florida feels kind of like bringing it to another home. It's the site of the largest launch complex in the world. From the early days of the Mercury program to the Apollo missions that took humans to the moon, and more recently, the Space Shuttle flight. Florida has seen thousands of rocket launches. Rockets have been launching from Florida for over 60 years, and the surrounding communities have no reason to expect these launches to slow down or disappear. It's like living next to an airport in a growing mid-sized city. You'd expect the number of flights to increase over time, not decrease. That's progress. That's development. Compared to Texas, local opposition in Florida is bound to be much less. In Florida, we also have the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, one of the largest and most diverse wildlife reserves in the state. And surprisingly, its existence is thanks to the Kennedy Space Center, KSC. This refuge is located within the KSC area and is protected by NASA, allowing nature to thrive undisturbed. KSC, of course, was the primary launch site for the Space Shuttle program. And, just so you know, for each launch, NASA used millions of gallons of water as part of the cooling and sound suppression system. The point is, this water wasn't exactly pure. Shuttle launches released a cocktail of contaminants, including ammonium perchlorate, aluminum powder, PBAN, and more. These substances had a far greater environmental impact than the methane and oxygen used in SpaceX's Starship. Given this historical context, SpaceX's use of the deluge system with drinkable water at KSC is unlikely to face much environmental criticism. It's a clear step up from what's been done in the past. In 2014, SpaceX signed a long-term 20-year lease with NASA for LC-39A, and in early 2023, SpaceX began construction of a Starship launch tower at this site. The tower tower's location, about 1,000 feet, 300 meters, from the existing Falcon 9 launch pad, shows that SpaceX is making the most of the available space, aiming to support both Falcon 9's current launches and Starship's future plans. The LC-39 launch pads were originally built to handle rockets twice the size of Saturn V, and even with double the noise. They're absolutely capable of supporting the raw power of Starship, but SpaceX isn't stopping there. They're even looking to expand further by utilizing Space Launch Complex 37, SLC-37, at Cape Canaveral. This site was previously used for Delta IV Heavy launches. With Delta IV Heavy now retired, SpaceX quickly proposed converting this facility to support Starship's launch and landing operations. There's a lot going on in Florida, right? The question now is, will SpaceX abandon Starbase? Absolutely not. It's the gateway to Mars. Starbase is the heart and soul of SpaceX's interplanetary ambitions. SpaceX has poured billions of dollars into developing Starship at Starbase. This massive investment reflects the company's long-term commitment to the facility. SpaceX is continuously expanding the Starbase campus with new assembly buildings and high bays. Every day, over 3,000 SpaceX employees and contractors work at Starbase. This not only highlights the scale of operations, but also emphasizes Starbase's importance as a hub for innovation and production. SpaceX is also building a second launch tower at Starbase, right next to the existing tower. This will significantly boost their launch and testing capacity at the site. SpaceX expanding its operations to Florida doesn't mean the company is abandoning Starbase. On the contrary, it represents a smart and ambitious dual-pronged strategy. Starbase will continue to serve as the primary hub for research, development, and manufacturing. It's where SpaceX tests new ideas, refines design, and produces key Starship components. Starbase will remain the testing ground for trial flights, where SpaceX can adapt and improve based on the results. Meanwhile, Florida is likely to become a dedicated launch site in the future. SpaceX can leverage Florida's existing infrastructure and favorable regulatory environment to accelerate its commercial launch activities. Looking at the bigger picture, we can see an ambitious plan gradually taking shape. In the not-too-distant future, SpaceX could own and operate 4 Starship launch pads, 2 at Starbase in Texas and 2 in Florida. Having 4 active launch pads would create an unprecedented launch capacity in the history of commercial space exploration. And it's not just about the numbers, it's about flexibility and redundancy. Launching Starship in Florida will be a truly game-changing move. SpaceX can build additional infrastructure in Florida and shift launch operations there temporarily. And soon, we'll see launches alternating between Starbase and Florida. With Artemis 3 requiring multiple refueling flights, it's entirely possible that SpaceX will have the launch pads in Florida fully operational by the end of next year or early the following year. Looking further ahead, for Elon Musk's ultimate ambition of settling on Mars to become a reality, SpaceX will need even more launch pads. We might even see Starship launch in other regions of the U.S., like Las Vegas or California. However, rocket launches are heavily limited by geography, and I suddenly realized that the U.S. doesn't actually have that many ideal locations for rocket launches, especially for a powerful rocket like Starship. So one day, we may see Starship launching from the soil of another country, an allied nation with more rocket-friendly. Starship has to launch. It's America's ace in the space race. Unfortunately, it's being held back by endless red tape, behind-the-scenes power struggles, and the ugly retaliatory actions of the FAA. Democrats and the FAA need to understand that Starship's development is far more critical than they realize. It shouldn't be blocked by political factors. It's a mission for the greater good of the entire nation. Starship's success is America's success, and it's time for these barriers to be removed. A highly renowned former astronaut who truly has expertise in space flights has issued warnings about the current situation. After the Cold War ended, we are now witnessing a new space race, with a powerful latecomer, China, making its mark. This nation has shown an incredible ability to learn and adapt to advanced technology, progressing at a rapid pace in space exploration. China is catching up with the U.S. in the race to conquer the moon. Recently, China's lunar ambitions reached a new milestone. They just unveiled their next-generation spacesuit for taikonauts, designed for their manned moon mission. This move by China has sparked a wave of media attention and stirred up the space community, including veteran astronaut Chris Hadfield, who weighed in. China has stated their astronauts will be walking on the moon by 2030. They just revealed their new suit. Even Elon Musk chimed in with a remark that summed it all up. Crazy. Look, the suit, primarily white in color, is made from advanced materials that offer full protection for the wearer. It's built to withstand the extreme temperatures on the lunar surface, while also shielding against micro-debris and harmful UV radiation. The suit features a relatively sleek design, not too bulky, and comes equipped with integrated long-range and short-range cameras, a modern control panel, and an anti-reflective helmet to protect the eyes from the sun's blinding glare. The flexibility of the suit has been demonstrated by taikonauts performing hand movements, bending and squatting, proving that China's focused not only on protection, but also on practicality and efficiency for work on the lunar surface. In recent years, the China National Space Administration, CNSA, has carried out a series of increasingly complex, robotic lunar missions. The pinnacle of these efforts was the successful sample return mission from the moon's far side, a historic achievement in space exploration. With these groundbreaking advances, China is positioning itself to become the second nation to put humans on the moon, with a manned mission planned for 2030. Well, and it's quite possible that by 2035, when China begins building their lunar base in the resource-rich South Pole region of the moon, SpaceX might still be waiting for the FAA to study the impact of Starship landings on the lifestyle of Atlantic anchovy populations before granting launch approval. Who knows? It's the future China's International Lunar Research Station, ILRS project, in collaboration with Russia, is shaping up to be a formidable counterbalance to the US-led Artemis program. China is racing ahead, but what about the United States? Musk expressed his frustration with the current situation in the US, stating, "Meanwhile, back in America, the FAA news is smothering the National Space Program in Kafkaesque paperwork. The FAA has been throwing up unnecessary roadblocks for SpaceX, a point I've analyzed in several of my previous videos. In stark contrast, China is racing ahead, as demonstrated by their Chang'e 6 mission to the moon's far side. China's progress has been so rapid that even US officials are sounding the alarm. Yet, it seems like the FAA hasn't fully grasped the competitive threat that China poses in the space domain. The agency continues to operate as if we're still in an era when space launches were few and far between, and America had no serious competitors in the race to conquer other celestial bodies. What's even more alarming is that the FAA seems oblivious to the fact that NASA currently has no way to land a crew on the moon's surface. All they can do is send a crew into lunar orbit. It's SpaceX, with its Starship, that holds the key to making lunar landings a reality. For the US to set foot on the moon again, Starship has to launch. Looking at the timeline for the Artemis 3 mission, it's set for 2026. Yet, the 5th test flight of Starship has been delayed until at least late November this year. And, in a worst-case scenario, it could slip into early next year. Starship needs to prove its reliability, demonstrate both stages' ability to return to the launch site, successfully fly Starship Phi-2, finalize orbital refueling technology, and launch over 10 times to get Starship HLS ready for a lunar landing. SpaceX has an overwhelming to-do list, and they need to be launching dozens of times per year, yet there are less than 2 years left. If things keep going at this pace, completing the Artemis 3 mission by September 2026 will be impossible. I wouldn't be surprised if by mid to late next year, NASA is forced to announce a delay in the mission. And honestly, by 2035, when China begins constructing their lunar base at the moon's South Pole, where there's a wealth of local resources, SpaceX might still be waiting on the FAA to finish studying the impact of Starship landings on the habits of Atlantic anchovies before granting a launch license. I've often avoided pointing out the political nature of the FAA, but it's becoming impossible to ignore. The politics are so thick that they're slowing down technological progress and hindering America's position in the space race. Michael Whitaker, the current administrator of the FAA, was politically appointed. He was nominated by President Joe Biden and confirmed by the U.S. Senate in October 2023. This highlights the significant influence the current administration and the Democratic Party have over the FAA. On top of that, Vice President Kamala Harris, a potential presidential candidate, is serving as the chair of the National Space Council. The issue here is that she has failed in her role as America's space leader. In reality, she has never valued the field of space exploration. Under her leadership, council meetings have been not only infrequent, but also ineffective. Harris seems more eager to rush through these meetings than to address the critical issues at hand. NASA's Artemis program, to be honest, is going off the rails. Key decisions regarding space traffic management remain unresolved, creating a dangerous void in national space policy. What's especially concerning is Harris's silence on Russia's move. While Vladimir Putin prepares to send nuclear weapons into orbit, potentially targeting U.S. commercial satellite constellations, America's response seems far too slow and weak. Now, I'm not here to push any political agenda or back a particular party. Instead, this is a direct and urgent plea to our leaders and federal agencies, including the FAA. Recognize that we're in a high-stakes high-stakes game. This new space race isn't just about science and exploration. It's about national security, technological dominance, and global standing. History has given us invaluable lessons. When the U.S. landed on the moon in 1969, it wasn't just a scientific milestone. It was a tangible way to outpace the Soviet Union, showcasing America's economic and technical superiority while placing immense pressure on the USSR's economic system. In this new space race, the principle of whoever gets there first sets the rules can absolutely apply to the moon. And if the U.S. falls behind China, it will be as devastating a loss as Russia's defeat to the U.S. during the original space race. This is about national prestige. Right now, we are still leading this race. NASA remains a global symbol of space exploration. The U.S. private sector is booming, with SpaceX being the standout, launching more payloads than all competitors combined. However, staying ahead doesn't mean we can afford to stop or get complacent. We've seen this play out before. Leaders and the FAA need to take note. China has achieved twice the electricity output and 10 times the steel production of the U.S., built a new space station, supplies 50% of the world's cement, a 25,000-mile high-speed rail network, the world's largest hydroelectric dam, and controls 60% of the global rare earth mineral supply. Chris Hadfield also highlighted their achievements in a tweet. China leads the world in 57 of the 64 critical technologies, up from 3 just 20 years ago. The USA has slid from 60 to 7 inches. This is a very subtle reminder of the current situation between the two countries. These accomplishments demonstrate not only China's rapid advancements in technology and infrastructure, but also their capacity to execute large-scale projects, an essential factor in space exploration. We can't allow them to set foot on the moon first, especially with Russia as their partner in this lunar mission. To stop this, the FAA needs to change. All right, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth looks at the latest advancements in space technology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.